On the roof of the world, glaciers on China's Qinghai Tibet Plateau are disappearing. According to the state-run Xinhua news agency, almost 200 square kilometers have vanished over the past 40 years. Liu Faming has been working at this ecosystem observation system for 15 years, patiently recording data on air temperature, humidity, wind force, rainfall, and the Earth's temperature.
The temperature has gone up in recent years. It is getting warmer and warmer. It used to be really cold in the mountains, but it's very warm now. The glaciers are retreating.
The numbers collected by Liu and thousands like him are the reason 80 world leaders, including Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao and President Barack Obama, are headed for Copenhagen next week for the World Summit on Climate Change. But the prospects of a meaningful agreement are slim. I'm Colin Chapman. Thanks for joining Agenda with George Friedman.
There are fundamental geopolitical issues at stake here. First, there's the question that a great deal of additional carbon in the atmosphere is coming from developing countries like China and India. They are not prepared to cut back so that the advanced countries in Europe and the United States are able to go forward. The Americans, the Europeans are saying that they'll cut back, but they really don't have the political clout to impose the pain, particularly during this economic crisis, that such cutbacks would take. None of these leaders want to go home having failed to achieve something, and none of them want to go home having succeeded in anything. They can't afford either. So they're going to try to maneuver here in a mutual game of appearing to have done something without actually having done it yet.
Some numbers may not be what they seem. At Britain's University of East Anglia, hackers uncovered an email from one of the world's leading guardians of statistics suggesting the data doesn't support the global warming thesis. I will keep them out somehow, he says. A second email from an officer at the US National Center for Atmospheric Research discusses temperature data, one of which shows that there's been no warming since 1998. The writer says, we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment. It's a travesty. We can't.
As with many leaks and stolen information, the emails are partial, but nevertheless they're very evocative. They show a group of scientists who are committed to their findings. They show a group of scientists who appear to be discussing ways to make their findings more persuasive, and a group of scientists who are looking for ways, it appears, to silence people they disagree with. On the whole, it has hit the credibility, fairly or not, of the movement pretty hard.
Whereas many leaders, including President Obama, have accepted and announced targets for the reduction of greenhouse gases, one of the world's fastest-growing economies and a big polluter is not. India is taking a negative approach.
Legally binding emission reduction targets are only the obligation of the developed countries. With regard to developing countries, they are expected to take mitigation actions, but these mitigation actions must be supported by financial resources as well as technology.
There has been a consensus for years that something must be done about global warming, and there has never been the political will to pay the price of what doing something would cost. People are suggesting cutting back carbon emissions to levels we haven't seen in half a century and more. That can be done. It involves a tremendous economic cost, shutting down any number of factories, any number of methods of transportation. This will hurt. People will be put out of work and so on. One of the things that we have heard many times is the argument that we need to have some solution to global warming, but the implication has always been the cost will be some minor inconvenience. I think what's happening in Copenhagen is that the politicians are looking at the bill and they're startled. And in being startled, many of them are going to have to run for office, really don't want to have to run for office again, given the bill that's being presented.
And now a look at what else is coming up next week. Turkey's relations with its neighbours and the rest of the world have been absorbing lately, and Prime Minister Recep Erdogan will be in Washington for a meeting on Monday with President Barack Obama. Erdogan will have fresh in his mind a confidential meeting he had on Friday with Iran's nuclear negotiator Saeed Jalili. There are lots of other things to discuss, including the US exit strategy from Iraq, and Turkey will want to get a read on the US's game plan for Iran, as well as a discussion on Turkey's bid to restore relations with Armenia. And Japan's Saishiro Ozawa, Secretary-General of the Democratic Party of Japan, will visit China and Chinese President Hu Jintao, taking a large delegation with him. Ozawa is an influential figure in the new Tokyo government, and it'll be interesting to see evidence of further improvement in relations between Asia's two most powerful countries. And that's Agenda for this week. I'm Colin Chapman at Stratfor.